The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the book club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood and I am back with another fantastic session today with a wonderful new guest. Today we are going to be talking a lot about cycling. So for those of you who might be really avid cyclists and, spend a lot of time on the road or, doing lots of cycling, this is definitely a perfect show, but it's also a perfect show for you to listen into if you are hoping to get into cycling. Maybe you were learning to ride when you were younger and then there's been like a huge gap and you haven't been on a bike again. So this will be perfect for you to hopefully get that slight nudge and encouragement to get back on a bicycle. And today I am really excited to be speaking to Iffat Tejani. Iffat is the co-founder of Evolve and British cycling road and time trial coach. And later on in the show, we'll be talking a little bit about some of an initiative that Iffat is working alongside Revolution Women's Fitness Group in Luton as well. So I'm going to welcome Iffat onto the show. So Assalamu alaikum, Iffat.
Alaikum salam, Imrana. Thank you very much for having me on.
Thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you've been quite busy with a recent ride and they've got an upcoming ride as well. But for our listeners, I thought what would be really interesting to start off with is to ask you how you first got into cycling.
Right. So I did not know how to ride a bike as a child. So it was very much in my adulthood. And when I say adulthood, when I had my kids, I might as well say it when I was 37, I learned how to ride a bike. And I had a bucket list. Basically, I was diagnosed with cancer. And, as you're sitting through chemo, you kind of make a bucket list. And there were a few things I really wanted to do. And one was to learn to ride and one was learn to swim. So as soon as I finished my treatment, I was like, okay, let's put this into action. And it was really hard trying to find someone to actually teach me how to ride. And we're talking about 10 years ago, when there were not that many female coaches around and cycling was not that developed, was not that diverse as we see it now. So I went on Google. I found someone I think he was a St. John's ambulance driver who taught me to ride. And the whole idea was learning to cycle and learn to swim was that I could do these activities with my children. I was not on the sidelines anymore and I could, take them out and, don't have to walk while they ride.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it sounds familiar, right?
Yes, it does, very much so. No, that's really wonderful. Firstly, obviously, so inspiring that it was, I guess, through a difficulty that you were facing that you were able to, do something really wonderful for yourself, I guess, for your family. And this idea of a bucket list, I think, is really, amazing. And I think, do you think actually, do people tend to make bucket lists a bit later on in life, or do you think people do it when they're young, or what kind of idea is that, and what other things, do you have anything else on your bucket list?
I think for a time when you do a bucket list is when something you've been hit with a tragedy and something has happened and you're like, oh, I need to reevaluate my life. Or my life can't just be looking after kids and working and coming home, there is more to me. So in a way, it would be nice if we actually made this list a little bit earlier to say, hey, look, kind of reevaluate and say, hey, what should I be doing? And I think especially with us women, we find it very, we get so busy being moms, being wives and, being, nurturing and looking after, we kind of tend to forget ourselves. So it would be kind of nice for us women to perhaps make this list early and not wait until something happens for you to go and, make a list and then try and action it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's such an important reminder. And I love that you use the word like nurturing, because you're right. I think we do tend to nurture others. And like you said, we forget that nourishment and nurturing for ourselves.
Yeah.
And what I really kind of feel is obviously, so I mentioned in the introduction that you're the co-founder of Evolve. And I would say from what I've seen and experienced, that is a nurturing space. So could you explain for our listeners what exactly is Evolve and how it came into being?
Yeah. So Evolve, so from my journey from learning to write and actually forming Evolve, if I were to say to you, it took about 10 years to come to it. And
Mm,
actually to form Evolve is when I had a relapse and and the cancer
mm,
back came back and Evolve came, let's say bucket list number two. So
mm,
because while I was kind of writing and I was writing with, I don't know if you've heard of Breeze, which is a women only network for of British cycling, where they just take you out for rides and stuff. I was really missing that community feel. You know, when we're out, we share our values. We've got that comfort blanket of riding within your own community.
mm,
And I could actually see that gap. And I would meet friends and they were like, oh, when are you taking riding with us? Can you take us? Can you teach us? Can you do this? And I was like, we need a club that is absolutely dedicated to Muslim women.
mm,
Where we look at the barriers that women face,
mm,
where we can, we're coaching. It is basically the whole entire from decision making to actually the rights and everything is actually,
mm,
spearheaded by women.
mm. No,
So it was actually, I had a relapse 2 years ago. And as I was coming in, I thought, you know what? As I was going through treatment, I was like, this dream of mine, I haven't actually got around to it.
mm,
So as soon as I kind of recovered from it, I was like, right, let's go on to start forming this club. But before we actually tried and, it's you have this idea of forming a club, and then you look at the practicalities or having a club, and suddenly you're like, hang on a minute, I don't have the skills.
mm,
How am I going to coach this woman? How am I going to take this women on rides? So I remember I think it was about 8 weeks after my surgeries. And I
mm,
was like, okay, right, I'm going to get onto the bike and I'm going to go and become a Breeze champion. So Breeze champion is basically ride leaders for
mm,
Breeze cycling. And I remember it was one of my friends and we rocked up in Oxford
mm,
to become these ride leaders. And, you talk about having a bad day when you go through illness. And trust me, that was a really bad day. And we rock up at this place and everybody's on the road bikes and we are on this, 100 quid bike spotter. And we looked at each other. We thought, do we really belong here?
mm,
Well, yeah, we
mm,
persevered. We became race champions. And then from there, it was literally just taking women out on smaller rides and taking them out. And then it just literally evolved from there. So the club was officially formed in lockdown, 2020. I remember actually we couldn't even do a launch face to face because of all lockdown. We actually did a virtual launch. And
mm,
then our first was a sportive, which we actually took about, I think about 40 riders
mm,
from Harrow to
mm,
Windsor. And
mm,
then it was literally then the journey started on, us.
mm,
It was three of us who started Evolve. Now it's a team of 9 women
mm,
who actually, do different roles within the club. And, we've got 15 coaches now.
mm,
And yeah, it for us is very much taking us out from our comfort zone
mm,
because we do not come from racing background. We are almost, as you said, people who've learned to ride and suddenly trying to run a club at a level where you see, white organizations running. And
mm.
cycling is a very white male dominated sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and trying to make that space for us in that yeah, has been a very interesting journey and we've learned a lot about ourselves.
No, I can imagine. And the fact that, it's such an apt name, Evolve, because, as you were speaking, you're right. It's kind of um developed and evolved in such a beautiful space. So, and you're right, this idea of taking up space in places, I guess, that we for whatever reason, that there's a sense of exclusion. Like you said, if it's a white male dominated sport, already there's a challenge, right? So you mentioned just a bit earlier about, certain barriers. Could you maybe just explore a little bit what have you found in your experience some of those barriers are? And I know you mentioned maybe the idea that obviously if there's something like a group that doesn't exist and you don't have a community, that can maybe be a bit difficult. But what else have you found that
So, I mean, if you look at it, if you look at our faith, if you look at our values and our principles, so I think for women, the massive, biggest barrier when it comes to cycling is hijab. Because if you look at the cycling clothing, it's not very modest, the whole lycra concept and things like that. So that was the biggest barrier to say, look, how can we make this sport inclusive, and how do we overcome this barrier? So I think the first thing actually Evolve, as soon as Evolve was formed, the first thing we all actually sat around the table and said, right, we need to come up with a modest jersey. And we actually then went and designed a modest jersey. So we looked at your standard cycling jerseys, which has got the pockets for your fuel and things like that, So we were like, okay, how can we take a standard jersey and how can we actually make it modest? And plus have the safety elements as well, being able to come off the bike safely and things like that. So that was the first solution we came across, and we actually went and designed our own cycling jersey. Which is again has got all the principle of what a normal cycling jersey does, and it's modest length as well. I don't know if you've seen that around. The second was coaching, because again it's such a male dominated sport. Most of the coaches, and especially at the levels that we wanted to, they were all men as well. So it was like, right, those who are confident riders, let's become coaches. So that was the second barrier that we kind of, we overcame as well. Bikes was the third barrier, because not everybody's got bikes. Especially from our community, we give a priority of buying a car than buying a bike.
Yeah, definitely.
So it was like, okay, you know what, let's come up with a bike library. And that's something, which I think, I had even spoken to you and Yasmin when we last met. That, look, you need to have your own bike library, and you need to have a bike library that is suitable for women. So yeah, and that was, so these were kind of the initial barriers that we started working with and started kind of to implement solution as well. We also then went to British Cycling and said, look, this is our vision, this is what we want to do. Can we have your support on it? So, I mean, to date, we are the only Muslim club, that's the first Muslim women club to actually get affiliated with British Cycling.
Yeah, that's amazing. And, congratulations for being able to achieve so much within such a short space of time. And, just listening to you, I'm like, yes, I need to get into cycling. And, we have tried. I know that, we'll talk maybe a bit later on about the session that you had. I think it was War Down with, Revolution Women's Fitness Group as well. What you did mention in terms of those barriers, I think are very interesting, and it's so important to be able to, I think, speak openly about it. And then hopefully, because that's the first step, isn't it? You talk about that barriers, you start overcoming them, and, hopefully, inshallah, you can kind of embed that change within our communities and get the encouragement and support that we need. But this, you mentioned a bike library, but because this is the book club show, I want to ask you, what does your book library look like? Do you have any interesting books on cycling? I don't know, is there a particular one that you dip in and out of? Because I don't have any books about cycling, so I'm really interested to know.
Oh, you know what? My favorite one, if you're talking about a book on cycling, it's called Lost Lanes.
Lost Lanes?
Yes. And basically, it's absolutely fantastic. So it basically gives you a breakdown of routes all around UK, which you can, which are safe to cycle, and you can, yes, I mean, it's fantastic. I can drop a link down to you, but do check it out.
And who's that written by? Lost Lanes?
Lost Lanes, yeah.
Yeah.
And then I've got a couple of ones which are kind of like, I would say like illustration books, but they're by David Walker. And he has actually, yeah, he's got quite a humor when it comes to cycling as well.
Mhm.
And so those were, yeah, those are kind of my two books. At the moment, my reading on cycling books is really boring because
Okay.
I'm sitting for my level 3 road and time trial, and that's a lot about looking at psyche of athletes, and it's all
Ah,
performance based and things like that. So at the moment, I'm looking, reading things like psychology of an athlete and bike fitting, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So they're
No, yeah.
yeah, they're
Uh,
they're not as interesting, but to me they are.
well, no, but you say that, but like you said, I guess because you're in the middle of kind of studying, it might be a bit like, oh, but actually, maybe for somebody who, I mean, I love the idea of Lost Lanes. I mean, I like just the book title. So, that actually sounds, really interesting, to me. But yeah, I've seen that one's by Jack Thurston. I mean, I've just quickly checked it. So yeah, and I love the book cover as well. It definitely
And
has
then
a
I
very kind
think
of
somebody
idea
also
of
gave
nature
me
and being
somebody
in
else.
nature. And how do you think actually, when we talk a little bit about, um I mean, obviously cycling in terms of a sport, but there's a lot of conversations recently about health and well-being, and
Yeah.
whereas someone might think, actually, maybe I'm just better off going to the gym, or doing something else. So why would you, or what would you say specifically about cycling? What maybe makes it a bit different?
I think nothing beats fresh air.
Mm,
You can, and I mean, for one thing I found from my cycling journey is the places I've discovered.
mm,
That, a lot of time that you would not see it in your car. And it's kind of funny, I've discovered these places and then I've actually taken my family and my kids. And they
mm.
would turn around and say, "Oh, how did you discover it?" And I was like, "Oh, guess where? Guess how?" Yes,
Yeah.
sir. But yes, it's just getting out and being able to stop wherever you want without having to find parking.
Exactly. Gosh, that
Is
is definitely
yeah.
a point.
Again, cycling being, the impact, well, depending on the level that you ride at, the
Mhm,
impact that it has on your body as well. And in fact, cycling is also prescribed by doctors now,
mhm,
as well for, for health and well-being as well.
mhm, yes.
So yeah, it's definitely one of those activities that,
Mm,
that is kinder on your body, unless when you go and try and knock out 100 miles, that's a
yeah,
different story.
that's different. No, I think you're right. I think it's true. And yeah, I mean, when I do go cycling, and my husband, he cycles a lot, and yet he's done the same thing that you have, I think, with your family, where he's suddenly like, oh, I found this such a lovely spot, or I found this, and then we'll go together. It's nice because you do discover, and that I feeling a discovery in nature is so beautiful. So I think that's
Yeah.
definitely a good reason to get into it. Um, and then, so we were talking, obviously, I know that you mentioned that you didn't learn to ride a bike when you were younger. But how about the reading side? Were you like an avid reader when you were younger? Did you have access to libraries? What was that kind of
Yeah,
like
so
for you?
I was actually brought up in Tanzania, East Africa. And yes, I was a bookworm.
Right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I would spend hours and hours reading.
Mm.
I was an all well, I have a sibling, but he's 21 years older than me. So I
Okay.
was kind of brought up as an only child. So
Mm.
yes, books were my century. And yeah, up to now, the days when I kind of want to, disconnect from the world. Yeah, I'd
And
be,
can
when I
you
was reading the psychology of an athlete.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly, exactly.
yeah, things like, yeah, kite,
Can you,
things like, I think the only book that comes up is Kite Runner, which everybody has read.
yeah, of course, of course.
Yeah,
Yes.
so
How
yes.
about when you were younger? Can you remember maybe a favorite book that you've had?
Oh, I'm going to give my age away now. So I was a huge Enid Blyton fan.
Right.
Nancy Drew,
Mm.
Wishing Tree, Secret Seven. Remember those?
Yes, I do. I do. Yeah, I do. I do. What was
Yeah,
it about those books that you think that you enjoyed? I mean, I know that there's so many of us who did read those books. What was it?
yeah. It was just, I think for us as kind of growing up, it was just a fantasy world, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we all wanted to become Nancy Drews.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Go on
Or
adventure.
yeah, or
Yes.
or Secret Seven, or Famous Five.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
We wanted to open our little detective clubs, didn't we?
But isn't it so wonderful that now, after, now the work that you're doing now, I
Yeah.
mean, you could say it is a bit like that. You're going on adventures. You've got a club. You've got this little, I call it little, it's not. I mean, it's just, it's so amazing. So I don't know. I think there's something there. Maybe you're the Nancy Drew of British cycling. Maybe we
Now you say it, now you put it like that. Well,
yeah.
that's good. Yeah, I just need to find some, yeah, I need to find some more adventures where, okay, a treasure hunt maybe.
Yes, exactly. No, that would definitely be a good idea. No, that's really, yeah, no, I mean, that's really lovely to hear. And so, tell us, we've got maybe a couple of minutes before we go to the break. What's the most recent kind of bike ride that you've done? And again, how was that?
So yeah, I recently completed a ride London 60 just at the weekend. And yes, it was, closed roads. Oh, it was an absolute amazing just to have London to yourself.
Mm,
We started off at Buckingham Palace,
mhm.
early hours of 6 o'clock in the morning, and I tell you, I absolutely love that time in the morning.
Yeah,
It
okay.
is so fresh,
Mm,
and yeah, just literally you're riding through London, through Stratford up to Essex and back. The
mm.
finish is at Tower Bridge.
Yes,
So as you come back, the majestic of Tower Bridge actually opens up.
mhm.
So yes, yeah, we just completed that one. So that's been my recent adventure.
No, that's wonderful. And that must be amazing because obviously you always picture London really busy, lots of traffic, lots of cars, and the idea, yeah, of having it to yourself and being able to, yeah, just cycle around sounds really
Yeah.
lovely.
Because they do
Yeah.
free cycle as well, where actually they close up London and actually you can go through the monuments.
Oh,
You can go to Trafalgar Square, you start Buckingham Palace, Hyde Park kind of thing.
mhm.
But the sportive doesn't actually cover this part. The sportive actually takes you out towards Essex, towards Epping Forest, which is absolutely beautiful apart from the hills.
Mm.
Because
Gosh.
when you go to the countryside, you're just going kind of go up and down, right? Rolling
Exactly.
hills. But
Oh
yeah,
God, I don't know how I'd cope. So do you, outside of doing the rides, like how do you tend to keep fit? Like, is it just through cycling or do you do other types of exercises?
so the thing is, I have quite a strict kind of training diary. So
Mm.
I kind of when I'm doing sporty, when it's season time, I almost have as like a 6 hour training diary. With
Mm.
bike training. So I've got a watt bike, which I'm sure you've seen them in the gym,
Yes.
or a turbo, which basically you hook your outdoor bike onto a turbo machine,
Oh,
which
right.
basically brings your cycling indoors. So you do a lot of base building in the winter.
Mhm. Yes.
And yeah, and then I have got yeah, I do strength training twice a week as well.
Mhm.
So it was literally I need to kind of in order for your body to be able to take on these endurance distances,
Mm.
yeah, you do a lot of base building over winter, then come February time is when you start heading out.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, what you do is you'll have quite an intense training period
Mhm.
before you do a sportive or before you do an endurance ride, because I do time trials as well.
Mhm.
And then, you have a little bit of a dip where you'll kind of recover to basically try and go again kind of thing.
Mm.
So yeah, you do have to, I mean, there are some amazing people who actually rock up and, would ride 100
Well, yeah.
without that much training. But unfortunately, I'm one of those, and with especially what I've been through, I
Yeah.
do need to train.
Yeah. No, I hadn't even thought about, that. Yeah, you're right, of course, because, you use the word endurance, that absolutely makes sense because that is what's needed and, training for that. But yeah, and the idea that obviously, because me, if it was me, it's like, oh, the weather's too cold, I'm just going to sit at home because I'm a little bit lazy. But you're right, obviously, if you want to really kind of, I guess, get the ultimate benefit once the weather's good and all the rides are happening. Yeah, no, that's really interesting to know actually. So we're just heading to the break now. So we are talking today to Iffat Tejani. She is the co-founder of Evolve, which is the cycling network for Muslim women. And she's also a British Cycling Road and Time Trial coach. In the second half of the show, we will talk a little bit more to Iffat about some of her favorite books, what maybe she's currently reading, and a little bit more information about what Evolve and Revolution Fitness Group are going to be doing in Luton soon, inshallah. So we will be back in a few moments. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the book club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood, and today on the show we are talking to Iffat Tejani. She is the co-founder of Evolve, the cycling network for Muslim women, and she's also the British Cycling Road and Time Trial coach. In the first half of the show, we were having a wonderful conversation about some of Iffat's favorite books that come to do with cycling, and also her inspiration in terms of founding Evolve, her own journey into cycling that she didn't learn when she was younger, but in slightly more older, and the amazing, I guess, initiative that Evolve has started, and the number of women and Muslim women they've got into cycling, and really developed a really beautiful community, I think, in terms of taking up space in a sport which is known to be probably quite dominated by kind of white male dominated, I think would be fair to say. Now in the second half we'll talk a little bit more to Iffat about a couple of books, and also an initiative that we're hoping to start within Luton for women who want to get into cycling too. So I'm going to welcome back to Iffat. So assalamu alaikum, Iffat.
Alaikum salam.
So let's go straight back into the conversation. You mentioned a couple of books in the first half of the show. One was Lost Lanes, and I think there was another one that you were saying you're currently studying to do with like the psychology in terms of kind of performance based. Is there anything that you can maybe suggest? Is there a book that maybe somebody, if they want to get into cycling, might be good, or maybe it's people who are already really into cycling and something new for them to kind of enjoy reading?
Well, actually, if somebody were into cycling, there's something called, I think Lonely Planet have produced this. I think it's called Epic Bike Rides of Europe, which is really, because what, Europe has got kind of the best bike cycling infrastructure compared to us here. And I mean, personally, I'm looking to do a trip in July cycling from Gibraltar to Tangier.
Wow.
And so if you are, definitely check it out, because it kind of gives you, tour bike touring is really huge. I have a friend who actually did whole London to she went by Istanbul to Istanbul. So yes, if you're into cycling, do check this one out, because it's got some really like epic routes. That kind of goes, there's some really nice routes in France, goes into Holland as well. So yeah, do check it out. It's called Epic Bike Rides of Europe.
Yeah.
And if I do get time to, hopefully, if I do get a little bit more time
Yes.
soon with everything that's going on, there's a book that's on my list to read, and I've never got around to it.
Yes.
Is Khaled Hosseini's and the Mountains Echoed. So
Yes.
he's the same author who did The Kite Runner and A Thousand Splendid Suns.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's been on my list. I just have not been able to carve out some time to read these books.
Iffat, you're cycling too much. That's what it is. You need to
Yeah.
or you need to somehow invent something where you can. No, it wouldn't be very safe to cycle and read. That wouldn't make sense. But
Well,
maybe
so we
you
have
cycle and you stop and then you read a little bit.
podcast,
Oh yes,
audiobooks.
that's actually a very good idea. That's
Yeah,
really
I think
good.
that's what, because normally I would have I'd have my headphones, but we normally wear these aftershock headphones. They're Bone headphones.
Oh,
They're
I have
actually-
aftershocks. Yes, I have those
Yeah.
headphones.
So I
Obviously,
think
people can. Oh, I was just going to say, of course, there's other brands that people can buy. We're not, just focusing.
yeah,
on
we're not
them, but
induced,
they are-
we're not thinking any brand.
Yes,
But yes, because it's basically they're more bone, so you can effectively hear traffic as well.
Yes.
So yeah, I normally, because when you're on, when I did the ride London, I needed something. I needed a nasheed or something to keep me, to keep me occupied for 60 miles.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, maybe I'll, download audiobooks. No, I think I'm thinking of the road and I'm reading the road and stuff like this. I think, maybe my rest days has to be book days.
Yes, I think that's always a good, because that's what we try to do on the book club show, just kind of advocate for trying to make time for reading and for books, because obviously it is difficult, like you said, I think really early on in the first half, that it's about sometimes carving out that time, so with whatever it is, and just being quite, I guess, consistent and having that perseverance, that once you start something to keep going, and obviously that can obviously apply to both reading and cycling. But yeah, no, I'm glad that you mentioned kind of the audio books. I mean, we have a Luton-based she works for different charities, but also has a really wonderful podcast called The Diverse Bookshelf. So
Okay.
that's one to definitely look out for.
I must check that one out.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and I think again, it's we were talking about in terms of British cycling and having those underrepresented communities being able to go into it. I think publishing a book, the book world, is probably a little bit similar as well. But what I was going to ask, obviously you just mentioned, so that was Lonely Planet, epic bike rides of the world. So you said that you might be planning something. So what kind of, where will that be, and what would you need to do to plan something like that?
Oh, so we have kind of because the one thing when we're looking at the Gibraltar to Tangier ride that we're doing in July is obviously we need to plan the route that we're going to be taking, and then where we're going to stay. Then bikes is obviously we're not taking our bikes, so we're now then looking at hiring bikes as well. So there was quite a bit of logistics that so there's 6 of us doing that. And then between Gibraltar and Tangier, there's a 2,000 feet elevation. So we need to do some hill training for that as well.
Okay.
So yes, and it was like literally, and then planning out how we're gonna pick up the bikes, and then plan the local routes there. We were looking at cycling around Lake Geneva, because one of the brothers was actually from Desi Riders, is one of the groups here in London. And they were cycling around Geneva, so we were looking at their route as well. So we thought, okay, let's do Gibraltar to Tangier this year as our first ride, and see what happens, and then maybe plan something next where we can actually take women from our community with us.
Yeah, wow, that'd be so exciting, and what a beautiful, I think just an opportunity as well, to really develop things even further. And you were talking a bit about, because I guess what I'm thinking is, if there's anybody listening in who wants to get into cycling, what is a starting point? Is it to do with right, you know, I need to get a bike, but is it just a bike? I mean, or are there other things that people kind of need to buy and you know, in order to be prepped, I guess.
So I think that the most of the things you obviously kind of, you know what? Yes, you just need, you need a bike. There are a lot of places who can hire bikes at the moment. There are lots of cycle hubs around us who do bike hire as well. So that depends on what level. If you're already kind of semi-confident, or if you're riding as a child, then you could effectively, you know, there is a platform called letsride.co.uk, which is again, you know, does lead rides.
Right.
And the women only rides, their family rides. There are these ride leaders who are trained by Cycling who can effectively, you know, and you just put in your postcode and these rides come up. Or the other thing, there are lots of, you know, there are a lot of clubs around. There's Brothers on Bikes, there's Ourselves at Evolve, there's Cycle Sisters, who do, you know, who do for, you know, for the Muslim community, who actually, you know, do club rides. So if you're semi-confident, that could be one option. The other thing is, if you're looking to get into cycling, you know, get into learn to rides and building up confidence as well. And that's something similar to what we, you know, what we held for you, you know, what we worked on together last week for Revolution, where we had, you know, we had women coming to learn to ride.
Yes. And can you talk a little bit about that? So what could someone expect? So if they want to get involved into learn to ride, obviously in terms of the Luton context, it's kind of early days, and it's starting to hopefully develop. So yeah, what might that look like? I mean, how much commitment is needed, or do people need a bike to bring with them, and you know, so and what can they expect in terms of what would they be being taught?
So a lot of time when it is a learn to ride program, you'll always find, whether it's with the cycle hub, or whether it's initiated with the councils, or whether it's, you know, run by clubs, they will always have bikes for hire, because they, you know, for learn to ride, there is an expectation people are not going to have that bike, so people do not know what to buy. So normally for a learn to ride, yes, you know, they normally would provide you with a bike or helmet. A helmet is a must. So with Evolve, is no helmet, no ride policy. Though legally, helmets are not compulsory, but we normally say, look, it saves lives, especially when, you know,
I'm
you're
so
a rider.
surprised. I'm so surprised to hear that. I had
Yes,
no idea. They're not
yes,
compulsory.
legally helmet, you cannot enforce it, but
Oh,
most clubs who have got that policy, no helmet, no ride.
yeah, absolutely.
So it is, the only thing is, don't wear baggy trousers. Just have, you know, just wear, you know, if you are wearing if you are wearing a abaya, you're wearing a jilbab, then it will be like, you know, tuck it in, so that way it doesn't get caught under the chain. For us, if there are any baggy trousers, we tend to put clips on our trousers, or put our trousers in our socks. Gloves, I always say mitts is really good to have, because you can end up, I think when you're a beginner, you really tend to hold the handlebar really, really hard.
Yes.
So it's nice to actually have some mitts as well, you know, an extra layer. Yes, apart from that, you don't need anything else.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. And because I think that's sometimes it, you know, we were talking earlier on about barriers, because I think with anything, when you start something new, I mean, I know I'm a bit like that. If I'm going into a new space, or I've decided to learn something. I mean, for example, you mentioned swimming. So swimming had been on my bucket list, because I had learned when I was younger, and then there was like a whole period of like 20 something years I never, you know, swam again. So I've just took up swimming a few months ago, and I remember feeling really a bit anxious that, oh God, you know, like, who's going to be there? What does the swimming pool look like? What's the coach going to be like? You know, so there's all these things going through your mind. So like, what could you say to somebody who might be feeling a bit that, and that's kind of stopping them starting, to just to kind of reassure them that, you know, because obviously, like you said, you know, we're hoping to start the kind of learn to ride in Luton. So what advice, or what would you kind of give them?
So at Evolve, we always say it starts with the first stroke of pedal. So your first standing up is a massive, huge achievement. A lot of people think that when you start, you're going to be start pedaling straight away. and you'll be put on the bike and say, right, here you go, balance and go. You see, balance is something that's discovered. It cannot be taught. So a lot of times, when we have any beginners, be it kids or be it adults who come in, and the first thing we do is we remove the pedals and put the seat really down, right, completely, so their feet are actually flat on the floor, on the ground. And then look, it's like, oh, don't we need pedals? I'm like, no, because you need to learn to scoot. You need to get that balance. So it's very much the coaching process is really broken down. So even like for kids, when for the because we run a Go Ride, which is actually for tailored for kids. So we run these sessions every Friday, and the first thing we tell the parents: take the stabilizers off, take the pedals off, and they look at us like, really? I'm like, yes, we need to get into a balance. We need to teach you balance. You need to discover, what the balancing point for your body is. So, yep, the first section is all about scooting and gliding. And then, as you can say, and in a way, we take the nervousness off because we introduce games as well. And it's also, the first session is all about using your brakes, building that confidence that actually you've got two things that you're braking with. You've got your feet and you've got the brakes.
Yes.
So it's building that confidence from there. Look, you're not paddling. You're just literally, you're just going to be scooting. You're just going to be balancing, walking with your bike. So it's very much normally, I think you have some people who are really quickly learn. So with some, it takes, I think, learn to ride sessions always 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay. Yes.
Because you kind of, if you throw a person in straight away, it doesn't help with anxiety. So you need to build confidence. You need to make sure, and as coaches, we can already see that, look, this person is almost on the verge of getting their balance. Then we'll just introduce one pedals.
Yes.
And then with the one pedal, we again scoot with the other one. Then, so it's literally the whole coaching process is broken down into chunks.
And that's it's, that's such a good idea, isn't it? Because you're right. I think that step-by-step kind of approach is helpful rather than, just being kind of thrown in the deep end. And and I think it's so interesting because I think when I learned to ride a bike when I was younger, it was probably with stabilizers, and it's always been, and I know that's kind of a natural assumption, isn't it, that if you've got stabilizers it will help, and potentially it does work. But of course, what you said is really, really, it's quite profound, actually, the idea that balance is discovered. It's not something that can be taught, because I guess in some ways it's individual, like you said, for each person, isn't it?
Yeah. And we have a lot of parents, like the parents would come to me and say, oh, my child can ride, and I'm like, oh, great. Oh, but they're riding on stabilizers. I'm like, no, they don't know how to ride, because take the stabilizers off.
Exactly.
And in fact, teaching on stabilizers actually takes them longer to get the balance, because you have this false sense of balance.
Yes, that's true.
So in a way, if we always tell parents that the best thing you can do for your kids at a very young age, 3-4 years, put them on a balance bike. Let them use their feet. Yeah, and you'll find that as they're walking in, it's quite so funny when you see the little kids and you have those little feet really moving fast. It's quite, and they get it so quickly. And the same with adults. You want to learn, get a gentle slope and take the pedals off.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you're right, because as children, there's like no fear, isn't there? It's just like, yes, they're gonna, and because I've got, nephews who've had balance, and they're just whizzing around. Around.
Absolutely.
Yes,
and it is, and I think that's one of the challenges when you look at skills of if you compare skills of women and adults who have come later on into cycling to kids who had actually were allowed to play with their bikes. Even if they come back later on, even if they drop off and they come back later on, the skill stays. But it's very, very hard with adults then to actually, simple things like cornering skills, taking your hand off the handlebars.
Yes.
As a child, they're very confident to do it, but try and do that with an adult, it actually petrifies them.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that, because even though I cycle, I don't cycle often, but I can, but I still yeah, I wouldn't say I'm confident in terms of letting a handlebar go. I mean, you know, so I'm going to be joining, probably trying to join whatever sessions, inshallah, that you've got planned. So can you talk a little bit about what is planned with Revolution in Luton? How maybe might be the best way people can get involved or find out more information?
So I think the credit for Revolution goes to you and Yasmin, because I remember actually receiving this email from Yasmin a while ago saying, oh, look, we're a club based in, Revolution in Luton, and we're really, really, keen to get women cycling. And I know after we met and we kind of went through the whole idea, and then she's been really, really determined, and she finally managed to get us all together and get our dates sorted, and we obviously ran the taster session. Unfortunately, I couldn't make it on that one, but from the coaches who kind of came to help, and Catherine, who is the British Cycling Clubs and Groups developer, who was there as well to help you out. Yeah, it was a really, really successful session. So I think, the best person perhaps to get in touch with you and Yasmin, because I know I'm coming down on the 24th of this month to run another session.
Yes.
And I think there is another plan then to run. I believe, but you may need to correct me on this, but I think we've got another 4 or 5 sessions that Yasmin has planned.
Yes, I think so. And I think those
Yeah.
dates, they still just need to be booked in. But you're right, 24th of June, I think it's 10 to 12 at Wardown Park. So
Yeah.
yeah, the best way would be to maybe get in touch with Yasmin, or there's a Facebook group as well that people can find and get in touch. Or of course you can kind of contact me through Inspire FM as well, and we can share details. And then what in terms of those sessions, so we've obviously got people signed up. You had the taster session that you mentioned on the 31st. You've got this one coming up on the 24th. Is there anything, because obviously you were mentioning this idea of a bike library, because I think one thing that maybe in terms of where Revolution are is the need to have potentially people can lend their bikes, and where we can maybe borrow them for a couple of sessions. So I think that is one thing that if there are any listeners who are tuned in at the moment, if you do have a bike maybe that's just kind of sitting there in the shed or in the garage and you're not yet using it, or if you're happy to lend it to us, please do get in touch, because that would be super, super helpful. But obviously on top of that, we are hoping as Revolution to there's lots of funding available, isn't there? So hopefully to get that kind of support so we can get those resources that are needed as well.
Yeah, because I think because of the mosque, I was involved in a project in Banbury. I think Madani Mosque in Banbury, where actually they got a container on site in the mosque, and they actually have got bikes there. So it would be kind of nice, because if that is a possibility, I mean, something that I'm really keen to do is actually have cycle to Juma.
Oh wow,
Yeah, because there will be, I think, in a way, or a ride after Juma kind of thing. So if these bikes are available, it will be actually, and I think there is another mosque that's actually organized and have a container on site with bikes on it. So, like the seniors and stuff could actually hire it out and just take it for a spin.
Yeah, that's such a fantastic idea. And I guess it's another way that, when we say about communities coming together to support each other, I guess that's also
Yeah.
yeah.
We're very, very, we are quite car dependent communities.
Yes.
So I know something like cycling would take a while, but I think if we all kind of make little changes and just have this, and it could be, I'm not talking about active travel, but just be able to get out and, and just exercise. I mean, yes, ideally it would be fantastic to have, bike shelters and, and containers in every mosque with bikes for adults and kids, so we could have like these sessions. Because with us, I think because of some barriers we have, and we like kind of, especially with women when it comes for hijab and stuff, we need to kind of, want to pay attention on the areas we're training in. If we are able to facilitate that, I think it would be really helpful for our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess what's really transformative is the idea, like you said, that now there is, for example, yourself evolve, and in Luton there's revolution, because it's our own communities, really leading on that. We have that lived experience. We understand what the barriers are, and we can really work with with the Muslim community and say, actually, we understand, and we could definitely work around, whether it's, the in terms of modesty because of our faith, and or whatever else there might be. So, definitely that's part that I would like to think people can feel that it's a safe space for them.
Because that's one of the things, because I work on the diversity and inclusion board, with be it with BC and with EFL, and I've always said the diversity has always been top. You have like the governing bodies like Sport England and London Sport, and they're all talking about diversity, but it's always been a top-down kind of effort. But I always said that diversity has to come within the communities, because we know the community really well. We know what works for us. So it has to be in a way that, we upskill the community. We provide the facility within the community. Because it's a comfort blanket the community provides. And, as Muslim communities, we are quite knit. We're quite close knit with each other.
Yes, exactly.
So it just makes it a lot, I think it gives the project or whatever we're doing a lot of chance, a lot of, we can succeed on it.
Yes, yeah, absolutely, inshallah. And I think, Masha, your beautiful intention that you had for yourself in terms of your bucket list has grown into something so much more, and it's brought so much people on board. So, obviously may Allah, reward you, and may Allah accept all your, the work that you're doing as well. And, it's been absolutely wonderful, Iffat, speaking to you today about obviously Evolve, about everything to do with cycling and some of your favorite books. It's been an absolute pleasure. And hopefully, inshallah, we will see you obviously in Luton on the 24th of June. And again, you can get in touch with either Evolve or Revolution to get more information. And yes, I just wanted to say thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for having me on. And look forward to seeing you all.
Inshallah. So that was Iffat Tejani. She's the co-founder of Evolve and British Cycling Road and Time Trial Coach. Myself, I will be back in a couple of weeks, inshallah, with a new book and a new guest. In the meantime, please do keep us in your du'as. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.